And welcome back to Waaaghtaktiks. It's truly the rise of the green tide as the Orks have made a gigantic impact on the meta, shaking the boots of all the Umis and the other gits. So, if you haven't been here before, what we do is every Wednesday we go over the stats and the facts from Goonhammer, and also always point out the winners, their paths to victories, and get some context for the wins. So, of course, like always, let's start with our sponsor, the Baron of Dice. So, of course, check them out in the description. 5% off because nobody likes taxes. For all you gets that helped us, thank you very much. It means a lot. And Baron of Dice does a great job for us. So, thank you very much. And we move on. Ooh, sorry, guys. Actually, one slide early. You guys didn't see. So, Orks have made a huge impact. We were sitting at a 51% win rate as a whole, but that can be a little deceptive. As you can see right away, 67% win rate for the Taktikal Brigade. We had 52 players for the weekend as a whole. Yeah. So the one thing I want to point out here for anybody that hasn't been checking in with what's been happening, Orks won 5 events with 4 different detachments. And I'll point out here right now that yes, there are some overlapping similarities of some units, but you'd be very impressed and happy to see that people were not simply spamming the new data sheets. So there's a little bit of that, but there's also some old school fundamental units here. It should bring great enlightenment to everybody, great excitement to everybody. And we can also talk about what people are expecting, which is an incoming nerf hammer, as GW loves to pull the trigger on the Orks all the time. So we can get into that. This is live, so of course, say what you got to say. I see what you're doing. Let's get into it. So some more. One thing I love to see here is that we had only 4 green tide players, but one of those green tide players was an undefeated player. For Warhorde, we're at 14 players, so that means a little bit more than the Taktikal Brigade, as they had 16 players. Bully Boyz with 10 players. One of those players did go undefeated, and then we had some other 4-1s. For Warhorde, we had one undefeated, and then 4 people that were X and 1. And then Dread Mob has fallen down to only 5 people playing it and it had a 28% win rate. Shout out to you, Gets having fun. And then The Hunt, people are at least trying it out, but it hasn't really found its place yet. Feels like there's a little squigs and stuff like that, a little expensive, but you'd be happy to hear that squigs will be spoken about today. So, of course, let's actually talk about a few successful WAAs that we will not be covering today, but we're giving shout outs to. One thing right off the bat is we have Mark Perry's 5-0 Taktikal Brigade. He's actually going to be a guest on Friday the 17th, so tune in for that live so we can go over his path to victory and some notes on his. And then we have Michael Mann, who was also a previous guest, and he's coming on the 24th on the Friday live, so we can go over his path to victory and you guys can get your questions in. And then I just want to shout out Louis from the Nottingham Super Major going 4-1 with Warhorde. Daniel Greaves, actually a Discord member for sure, at the Nottingham going also 4-1 with his Waaaghtaktiks Brigade. And then we have Jack Tight with his 4-1 Taktiks Brigade as well at Nottingham, followed by Michael House at Extremis Big Ben 10 with the Bully Boyz going 4-1. So that's what's up, because we have so many people that did well. Want to give these guys some credit, some shout outs, because 4-1 is still a great achievement, especially at these super majors where it was really potent and strong, field out there. But we have 5 people that went undefeated we're going to cover today, not including the 2 guests that we're going to have coming up these following live streams. So be excited, as there's more to come other than what we have for today. But of course, starting off with today, I had to get stuck in with Doug Johnson and his Bully Boyz. So there's a reason I deliberately did choose Bully Boyz, and that's because this is the detachment that I have, been seen to say I wasn't too excited about. I appreciate Bully Boyz because they have double WAAAGH. Who doesn't love double WAAAGH? But all in all, I didn't really think that they were gonna make a huge get huge love or favoritism with the new detachments coming out, with shooting being integrated for combined arms, with data sheets. I meant new data sheets coming out. But I ended up being wrong, because the WAAAGH change itself was enough to bring Bully Boyz back on the menu, back on the radar. So Doug Johnson not only did that, but if you're looking at what I have on the screen, he actually has 2 units of Squighog boys. So I just wanted to start off hot and because everybody was expecting some new data sheet spam today. We're starting off knocking people off their boots with Doug Johnson. So for his actual appearance, where you can see right here, he was at the Hawaii War on the Shore Charity GT. So it's roughly like 40 players, so 43, I think. So, like always, let's go over Mr. Doug Johnson's list. He has Gazgul Thraka. Absolutely love Gaz. He can go in so many different, just about every detachment. He really just plays the game. He helps you play the game in a way that Orks don't really have without him. Just the fact that you become a pure mid-table bully going off on the wall with more ferocity than people are expecting and bringing you 4 damage. Love Gaz, and a lot of time people focus on him and not realizing he's not that fundamental a lot of our times, especially once we've called the wall. But in this, you do get double of his Makari's lethal, so that's great. Then you have Mazrog and a beast boss on Squigosaur. Mazrog allowing you fight on death. Of course, they give you the access to the double wall. Then you have Big Mech in Mega Armor. 2 of those Big Mechs in Mega Armor. Yes, this was the tricky tech piece right here. A lot of the time you overlook the Big Mech in Mega Armor because you're like, I'll just take the War Boss to make sure I actually hit stuff. And he brings more damage 3 attacks for the double wall. He has potential to actually take an enhancement for the teleport so that you can actually rapid ingress and deep strike these mega knobs. So people a lot of the time just default to the war bosses. We see Doug really paid attention to what the meta was. It was really shooting heavy, and he decided to change up what we like to call the pain wall. So the pain wall is when you focus on a lot of feel no pains in your list. Pretty much every unit on your list would have a feel no pain if accessible. Which we have that, and we cover the detachment itself. We have videos about that, but he took that and just decided, well, I'm going to also stack the invuln on that, the regenning capability of that. The regen capability actually kind of makes you a little faster as well, as when you pick guys up, you get a little closer. So sometimes you can leave one unit out in the open, bait some of their shooting, let them kill one of your mega knobs, and then you walk up a little closer. And it also costs people to invest in combined arms to you. So they'll shoot at your mega knobs and they'll charge them, and then you get to reactive and interact with your squigs, because in this case your squigs might actually be the second wave, because they're really weak in the meta to getting shot from across the table. A lot of people have good damage 3 and are teched into killing elite infantry, so I'm subject to believe that he was, reserving one of these units and just being really cagey with the second one, something like that for the squigs. Then last but certainly not least, he has the weird boy. So the weird boy actually allows you to just run around and start scoring, and there was no boys on this list. I can double check, make sure I don't mess it up, because we're making sure out here, but there was no just battle line at all on this list, as you can see. So he went all just nothing. That's a solo weird boy out there just trying to score secondaries. Love to see it. Followed by 3 minimum size unit of Gretchen, because my boy just needs some stuff, right? You just need some stuff once you're going this elite. You can already feel your bank breaking of your points, right? He took the 3 5-man units of Mega Knobs, and yes, they were combi weapons and power claws. If for some reason this was something else, this is what they showed on BCP. Then we have 2 5-man units of Storm Boys, followed by those 4 Squighog Boys, the minimum size unit, and simply 2 trucks. So let's actually get into my boys' path to victory real quick. Love to see that list. And we start off hot with... And of course, this is live, so nice to see you get. Whoa, yeah, no cult of speed. So he said, then we have Necron, Star, Shatter, Arsenal. So as of today, actually, time of this recording, these boys have been nerfed. It costs 2 CP to do their +1 to wound. A lot of the time, you won't see maybe a Silent King anymore, and boom, you can see ones on this list. I can see him end up being dropping after this change, so just keep that in mind when we look over this. So we have a Catacomb Command Barge, followed by Katana the Nightbringer, Hexmark Destroyer, Overlord of the Translucent Shroud, and then a Silent King. Very elite, as we know. We have a 5-man Immortal unit, 2 Doomsday Arcs, 2 Flayed Ones, 2 individual Locust Destroyers, followed by 2 minimum size unit of Tomb Blades. They're like they're bikers. They can move, get a little volume of shooting. Pretty cheap. They're kind of nice. And then a Track Stalker. This thing has a 4-up invuln built in. It's pretty low toughness. I think like 8 or 9, but it has I think double-digit wounds, about 10 or 12, and really its purpose is to remove cover. So a little bit uncommon little tech pieces there. But everybody's familiar with the Doomsday Arc. This detachment overall is looking for extreme damage, and it actually will try to stat check you with the Silent King. But trying to stat check something like Bully Boyz is not necessarily what you want to do when they actually have Gaz and the Squigs on the field. So keep in mind with our list here that Doug had is that he has the ability to kind of set the pace. And one thing I always bring to people's attention is Necrons don't like to be pushed back as they're not really going to punch you off too well, right? As you can see on this list, it's really just the Silent King and the Catan that will fight you. The Command Barge, I guess, is all right too. But all in all, if you can push them back, erase all their scoring units, keep them in the deployment zone, have them kill you, that's really how you keep Necrons, at bay. So they don't want to meet you at the mid table, and Squigs bring the volume of punches to kind of get around those invulns at least that they have, right? Because something like a Doomsday can be kind of hard for a Mega Knob unit to kill, but if you can get a Squighog boy into you, that makes a difference. That does help. So all in all, the 4-up invuln I'm sure was actually important too. And we don't really know what the mission is. Would love to see that, but from my personal experience, at least paying attention to Scatterstar, they murder you if you are just standing and kind of baiting them. So you would have to at least be cagey with one of your Mega Knobs, only be maybe sticking out for an objective. That's where the regen could be really awesome. One Doomsday takes you out. You pull that one guy. It could be pretty hilarious. So that being said, I'm sure Doug was just on point because he scored a 93. And if you can just play an aggressive, search and destroy deployment, you can just run up on them with Bully Boyz, especially with how we call it now. Oh man, I love this. How we call it now in our own command phase makes a huge difference. And yeah, there was a little bit of the shooting. People are shouting out the combi weapons. Yeah, I love you. I know you guys love that, right? That they get to shoot. You're right. The big mecha allows you to reroll ones to hit on those combi weapons. So if somehow you can enjoy those shots, go ahead and enjoy them. Love that. Then we have his second matchup was against the Tau Empire. So you can see the meta is gun line, people trying to hold the line and hit you with high EP, high damage units. You have the Doomsday Arc and Scatterstar. Now we have Tau Empire. So you can see he has the Big Mech and Mega Armor because these units that you're going to see on these lists do have access to -4 AP, stripping cover, stuff like that. They would just melt through your Mega Knobs if you didn't have the Big Mech. So he was teching in intelligently here to this. So we have a cadre, 2 cadre Fireblades. This is a auxiliary cadre, by the way. I think that's the new one, so it has crew support. 2 units of cadre Fireblade, followed by a Commander Shadow Shun, Commander Enforcer Battlesuit, and then a Dark Strider. We have 3 minimum size unit of breachers. These guys are great for like clearing kind of equivalent battle line or anything near 100 points infantry, especially if they're on objectives. So pretty potent. Love that they can, and they like that they can bring transports to stick these guys in too. They can. So in this list though, he has Crisis Fire Knife battle suits. They have a little bit of damage 3 and ignore hit modifiers. We got a Ghost Kill, 3 individual crew carnivores, crew. Oh, sorry, not individual crew carnivores, excuse me. These are the 10-man unit guys. I don't know why I said that. Then we have a crew Far Stalker, followed by 2 units of crew hounds, which are the mounted infantry, mounted cavalry type dudes. A Pathfinder, 2 Skyray gunships, and then 3 units, of stealth battle suits with 2 units as Vespid. Goodness, he had a lot of stuff. That's one thing you always have to keep in mind when you're playing Tau, is a very cheeky, proficient Tau player, especially if they get to deploy first and they get to go first, will just set up layers. I'm inclined to believe Doug went first here. Maybe he didn't. But going first, especially Bully Boyz, would be a great advantage into this army. He doesn't end infiltration. Of course, we see Doug does. But one thing you have to keep in mind with Bully Boyz is they do have 6-inch pile and stratagems for those Mega Knobs, right? So if they do get easy charges off, you're giving them space to get closer and closer to you while you're focus firing them when they have invulns and regen capability and everything else is calling the distance on these guys. Again, you have to be aggressive and really just chew through them because they have layers of screens anyway. So you have to kill them because if you don't, then they're really small units, or in this case, did he have didn't look like he had a lone ops, did he? Maybe Dark. I don't think Dark Strider is. So nonetheless, you got to pay attention with these guys because they like to score well. They hold the line a little bit weird, similar to Guardsmen, but this was an 81-point win. So it was like a second lower scoring game, but that could sometimes just be the mission. Great job in there because typically you're looking at this, Bully Boyz list and you're like, wow, everything's kind of expensive. If they focus you down, you're getting kind of messed up here. But love to see it. Love to see. Oop, took my own head off. It must feel nice to actually have saves and feel no pains and really mess up the Tau math, though, right? This all takes. Just all it takes. They just need to have one turn that you roll feel no pains, and then you just steamroll them with a double wall. So I enjoy that. Having 4-ups, feel no pains, healing guys, regenning guys, that'd be sick. And like I said, 6-inch pylons. That makes a huge difference in Bully Boyz, because if they have layers to this, that means you can eat one layer and then move into the next layer that stand behind them, start tagging stuff, and then that makes Tau have a hard time and not be able to reclaim that space, even if they are killing you. So I like this tech piece. Doug, you're on point here, buddy. So far, you're on point for what you're reading in the meta. And here you go, continuing to read her why, because he went into Chaos Knight. So of course, this is War Dog spam. And like someone said, Gazguli and the bullies. Yeah, Gazgul right here is about to bully these War Dogs. So we have a War Dog Stalker, followed by probably 6 Brigands. 6 Brigands and 6 Carnivores. Very easy on Stalker. Like we always say, these guys are stat check. If you have the stats, you can check them. One thing you don't want to do as these knights is try to stat check Gaz with a bunch of Squighog boys and Mega Knobs. They're going to chew right through you and actually have feel no like invulns, so that if your Brigands don't pick them up when it's that one time to go, they're chewing through you guys. You have to hope the Carnivores do the heavy lifting. We can fight on death. We can obviously interrupt. Gaz can run Makari's invuln save if you haven't eaten his Mega Knobs, which you probably haven't, because even if you've shot them and maybe you done Tank Shock, you probably didn't kill the Mega Knobs. I mean, Makari's still there. You still got to kill him in the activation. He's eating all of those Carnivores by himself. Absolutely love to see it. Like I said, Mazrag will make his unit fight on death as well. This would be a really fun game. You do have to be a little cheeky because they can out OC you and stuff if you're not killing them effectively and they spike their saves, but because he didn't bring kill saws, so he is only -2 AP. Hypothetically, he could whiff, but I don't see it happening. I'd like to show off my big head. Pretty straightforward with those War Dog spams, right? We know that's been around since Index Hammer. Then we go into his 4th round, which is into Chaos Knights. Did he have 2 Chaos Knights? He did, right? Because I already clicked Ben and Nam and Tim. So this is a whole different guy, and he did the exact, oh no, not the exact same. We have a War Dog Executioner, which means he might have allies. Yep, and then he had allies. So he had 3x3 Nurglings and Poxbringer. So this could be more interesting to him. Because you could, pull off infiltration, try to move block, but you only have 2 trucks here, right? Sometimes you're like, man, I have a bunch of trucks, and then the guy gets the Nurglings, and he goes and stands in my truck lanes, and then I kind of get a wall whiffed. I get one of my WAAAGH kind of choked up. And the fact that we call him on our command phase when we know we want him to happen is a big deal. And the fact that our Git has Squighog boys, for example, that is like, cool, you want to give me to a easy leapfrogs? That's cool. This is where you guys that love the combi shooters might actually come into play, being able to pick up some of those wounds off those Nurglings and then charge through or past them, or run through or past them and then charge them to get a little further and string out your unit after you have only 1 Nurgling base left. You kind of try point it, and then the rest of your unit swings out. So that you could take advantage of that, and actually the fact that you have a little bit of shooting. But all in all, it comes back to the stat check. Can you kill these knights? Yes, you can, because when the time to go and you have Gaz lethal going on Squighog boys, it means their mounts are also very effective at punching, which means they chew through stuff as well. So shout out to that Git, because these are double Chaos Knights he had to go through. And then last but certainly not least, he went into the Dark Angels, the Librarius Conclave. So I actually got lucky and actually did end up getting a rep into this. Oh, did I have the wrong here? In case you guys didn't see. Timho, it was the same thing with 1 Executioner and then 3 Nurglings and a Poxbringer. That was the difference. And then his 3rd round was the Ben H, and Ben just brought all War Dogs. And then, like I said, we have the Librarian Conclave Dark Angels. This guy said tired wall. There are no tired walls around here. So for the Dark Angels Conclave, these guys get quite elite. So Marines are already elite. Librarian Conclave feels even more elite. So we're gonna have a lead off right here. We have Azrael, which gives us units sustain and I think 4th Minvuln. We have a Librarian, 3 Librarians, then 2 Terminator Librarians. Everything in this detachment wants to go off with a Librarian, which means pretty much every unit's going to have one, or it doesn't get any data sheet buffs for the most part. We get Intercessor or access to the detachments for buff to their data sheets. Is a better way to word that. 2 of the Deathwing Knights, 3 units of 6 Inner Circle Companions, 2 Scout Squads, and then a Stern Guard Squad. So these guys do have access to dev wounds on, I believe, 5+, if this is the weapons they brought. Correct me if I'm wrong, anybody. This ends up being their version of anti-vehicle. So they're looking to still shoot you with the bolters if they have to, and they can get +1 to hit. It's usually their first Oath of Moment target. That way they can kind of delete a vehicle or whatever, because they require the re-rolling wounds to kind of activate that criticals, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's from what I understand. And yeah, I mean, the fact that he got this far means he was pulling it off, because these guys are quite potent when they kill you. They'll get access to sustain. They can throw what we know as grenades from 18 inches away, so they can literally just look at you, throw grenades at you. They get to choose to move faster. They get to advance and shoot. So they get a bunch of cool different buffs and still get the double oath thing. But all in all, you're challenging Orks at what they want to do. You're taking these guys and you're running them into gas and mega knobs, and so it does require you to be cagey. But keep in mind, the one thing that we have as Orks that they don't have is Grots. So you could end up taking something like Grots, Storm Boys, our trucks, and they become kind of the pacer here, right? You can use them to stop the other the librarian units from charging you and getting the initiative on your Orks, because that's something you have to be aware of, since how our wall works now is that we have to declare in our command phase. Therefore, we can't use it defensively when you're running Bully Boyz in that sense. So you can't let them get off on you first, which means you are going to take, those Grots, because you could see in this librarius detachment, there's not, anything that you're care that's going to come down, because the Deathwing Knights, right? But you're not going to care to all game screen your backfield. This is going to be toe-to-toe in the mid-table. They're trying to get you maybe turn 3 already, drop everything. For the most part, you can take one of those Grot units, one of those Storm Boy units, those trucks, and use them to screen out and kind of soak up some charges. And then from there, you counteract charge, and you just kind of steamroll them at that point. The fact that we have Feel No Pain matters, because some of their damage does come from mortal wounds. So that's also a pretty cool tech thing that he ended up pulling off by having this specific detachment. So cool techie. Though of course librarians are going to try to mortal wound you too, but that's where you playing a pain wall with Mr. Doug Johnson ends up paying off pretty well. So shout out to Mr. Doug Johnson, because he ended up pulling that one out with a 78, so it wasn't easy, right? You can see this was his lowest scoring one. Respect to that guy for librarians, because it can be potent. They can end up moving quicker, get benefits to their movements. They can choose to ignore modifiers. They can do all types of cool stuff because they have librarians. They have a lot of sustain usually. Yeah. So all in all, these guys they're a potent. I'm sure he had to respect their output enough to take the initiative and beat the crap out of them. So not sure who went first, but would love to know. So shout out to Mr. Doug Johnson, pulled that one off for 5-0, almost got a 100 there on game 3. But all in all, I feel like that was a great read on the meta as a whole for Mr. Doug Johnson. After looking at his path to victory, he understood there was going to be shooting gun lines, there's going to be stat check vehicle armies, and then there's going to be elite Marines. Sorry guys, I'm excited. So let's go over Doug's list one more time. We have Gazgul Thraka, Mazrog, Scragbag, a Beast Boss on Squeaky Sore. Keep in mind, his heroic interventions for 0 CP might be a little interesting. Just saying, when you have double wall, right? Because you're going to have the Invult and the Feel No Pain. Then you get two Big Mechs in Mega Armor for that shooting defense durability. I kind of feel it now that they've increased the prices of a war boss. You can kind of get the differential here and say, well, is it worth it? If you're taking into a pain wall, that might be the new way to do it. Shout out to you, Mr. Doug. Then we have a Weird Boy for the solo tech, so he can score secondaries on his own. I like that. Really like. Of course, sometimes the Weird Boy is just gonna roll a 1 when you don't want him to, but nonetheless, having an individual character that can jump around, do stuff for you, great in this detachment, because you're going to struggle to score secondaries as everything else is stomping someone out. The 3 Gretchen unit, because everybody loves Gretchen. Keep in mind, one of these guys can absolutely be used for a screen, maybe even 2 of them for the counter melee matchup. Put them up there. They're your OC because you don't have any battle line. He did bring the combi weapons. Heck, my boy was taking advantage of those reroll ones. Let's do it. In the setup where people are bringing T3 and a bunch of weird little trash units, there might be a home for that for you kids that are excited to do that. Then the 2 Storm Boy units, and then ultimately 2 minimum size unit Squighog boys. I'm inclined to believe they were the second wave, because the Mega Mech was going first, and then the Squighog boys are going second, followed by the 2 trucks. The trucks would be each Mega Mech unit could be put in a truck and then disembark. So love to see it. Or maybe even a Grot unit. Maybe even a Grot unit from some of you cheeky kids. So one last shout out for Mr. Doug Johnson. Whoa! For the Bully Boyz making their shout out. Then we move on. So now we move on to Mr. Joel Davis. So Mr. Joel Davis, let me move over some of these slides, my boys. Mr. Joel Davis brought us the Green Tide. And I know people were a little down and out because they've been nuked. And then the way you see it is you need a lot of boys. It's hard to do. It's a skew. Yes, but keep in mind that there's always a place for skews in the meta when the skew hard counters what the meta is. And in Joel Davis's case, he understood that the meta was vehicle heavy, elite infantry heavy. So he decided to tuck back into the Green Tide. And so for Joel Davies, he was over here at the Denver 40K Fight Club. He ended up getting first place here. As you can see, our boy, Mr. Michael Mann, right here in the second place. Like I said, he's going to be a guest with us on Friday, so check that out. But we're talking about Joel today. And Mr. Joel surprised everybody, I'm sure, with this in a way that they were like, dang, man, I'm so equipped to just kick the heck out of something. And instead I got the boys. But he did tighten, cut off some fat, trim some fat that were the boys. And he went a little bit more DACA heavy. So we have a boss Nick Rob. You do need that, right? You do need some kind of individual character or tech piece to score secondaries innately. Now, the reason why Snickrod's cool is because there are armies that just have just enough indirect to kill your storm boys. Something that you would use instead. Snickrod can do with almost no reprisal unless the enemy has like 6-inch deep strike and can hunt him down, which is kind of his counter, right? Which everything is a counter 40k, so still awesome piece. We have Gazgul Thraka. Gazgul Thraka wasn't brought in the initial Green Tide, but I actually did like him. You need something that can gain a little bit of respect from the enemy, and it also increases your potency of your boys when it is that go time on the wall, because there are things in the game that can simply beat the crap out of you if you just run into them and say, I'm just going to stand here, especially because we can't do secondaries by just standing stuck in with people anymore. So now you need to be able to at least handicap enemy units enough that you can continue to beat them on the rate of attrition. So then you have, of course, the 3 big bricks of boys are all identical. They are War Boss, Pain Boy, 20 boys. Bam. I'm on board with that. I don't think you need to go much higher than that, because if people are going to get Call the Horde, they need to just straight up focus on these couple kill units. You could be inclined to bring a Zod, but just nonetheless to say this is what everybody's kind of more teching into, and I respect it and I understand it, because you are countering with tools that are better for a vehicle heavy elite infantry, meta. So you do need some respect, which is why he has gas and why he's only keeping the durable units, killer units of boys. But he does bring a weird boy with a 10-man unit of boys for that scoring potential. You can do of course you can do secondaries with it, but a lot of the time people like to use it for secret missions. I think it's cool for just simply sticking objectives and then jumping to another one and sticking it. So you do your home, then your natural expansion, while your boys go over and take over the mid table and the enemy's natural expansion to really try to throw off their primary if you can. We have 2 trucks, and that's because we have 2 10-man units of flash kits on this. So another thing people say is that they hate that you could just simply screen out big bricks of boys. And so there's a lot of time that flash kits have been making their appearance more and more in this. So we don't see the full 30, but I think 20 is a great idea. Obviously, his results speak for themselves, as you do need to at least be able to, 1, pick up enemies' garbage little T3 screens of 10 models sometimes. 2, you need to damage people before they get into your boys sometimes. And 3, they're not that crappy. They're not that easy to push over the flash kits themselves with the 4-up armor saves and having 2 wounds of pop. They don't require character support in that case either. They don't give up Call the Horde, and they can actually get the initiative and take advantage of trucks, which are one of our best units. We have 1 Grot unit and then simply 2 Mega Nods with 10 kill saws. In my opinion, he goes to 10 kill saws because he is especially expecting you gas into enemies that have a 2-up armor save and require him to have that -3 AP. That's my assumption, just because that's exactly how I was using him, and I felt the difference, and it was really important. So before we move on to that, let me acknowledge Jay Hoon, my get with 10 gifted Waaaghtaktiks memberships. Whoa, Jay Hoon, always a huge supporter, always hooking you guys up in the chat. So let's get some more bosses and Gaz and him. And thank you, Git, for being so generous. As always, my Git, you've been around for such a long time. Actually, it says right here, 14 months right here. The meta wasn't ready for the orc shooting. Whoa, yeah, they weren't ready for the combined arms aspect. They weren't ready for the fact that we can actually shoot vehicles now. And in all, I think they weren't ready for the new wall. So shout out to you, Git. You have been around for a hot minute. The channel is only like 18 months old. and we probably got memberships around 14 months ago, right? So that's how long our kid's been around here. So thank you very much. Then we has Ricky B becomes a YouTube member. Whoa, let's go. So Mr. Rick B, and we were talking about the old, and now we have the new. So welcome, you new get. And thank you very much. Love to see it. Love to see it, guys. Very exciting time for the orcs of all kinds, shapes, and sizes and types of WAAAGHs. So then we move on to Joel's path to victory. So keep in mind, we'll keep tipping into his list as we go through this. So we have Chaos Demons. This is Legions of Access. So right off the bat, this is what people are considering the most competitive detachment for demons, which is the Slanesh mono Slanesh detachment. We have Be'lakor, the Mask of Slanesh, Keeper of Secrets, 3 of them. One of them has the enhancements for Soul Glutton. Then we have 3 units of Demonettes and then 1 unit of Fiends. So this is what I think was the first iteration of what people were thinking would be great for the meta, knowing it's a shooting meta, but with just how fast these guys are, I can expect in the future, if you're seeing this detachment, they won't have Be'lakor anymore. Shout out to Kevin. So if they do, a lot of the time they're going to have more Fiends. And the reason they're going to have more Fiends is because there's a stratagem in this detachment that allows you to, essentially bleed off wounds that are focused on one of your unit of Fiends into these Demonettes. So you could take, a Demonette with one of their characters, which is usually like a Chariot or something. I don't know what a Chariot is. It's the Mask of Slanesh, I think, if they choose to do this. You could take a Demonette or with their character, put them next to a Fiend unit. Fiend unit is exposed, about to take damage. When you focus on them, you use a stratagem, and then they bleed the damage over to the Demonettes, and then the Fiends are still more alive. So very fast, this whole detachment is, and really good at killing. So you're going to see it, but it is not ready for the Green Tide, because there's one thing the Green Tide can do. They can soak some of these Demonettes, punching them, or especially the Keeper of Secrets keeping them. And when you have those flashy of the gits, it means you're fine at shooting at Fiends and shooting at Demonettes themselves. Even if they bleed the wounds over, you're like, cool, I'm 2 damage, I'll take that. I don't mind. I'm winning you on 2s. If you're the Demonettes, if you're the Fiends, I'm winning you on 3s. You're 4 wounds, I'm 2 damage, let's get it. So that ends up playing into your favor. Having Gaz means that if the greater keepers do get stuck in a unit of boys or end up charging something that they don't find ideal, then Gaz can actually countercharge or just take advantage of his lethal in that case. And that's why, like I said, Gaz becomes that interesting tech piece, because if not, what are you going to do when these kind of units can just stay stuck in combat and eventually over time chew up all your boys, feel no pains or not, right? So in this case, your boys ends up soaking some of the damage, and then your other units of boys kind of gang up on it. Love to see that. And keep in mind that you might see that stuff more prominently. And if you do, they're going to have more Fiends. So the Flash Kits will still feel like a great, tech piece, in my opinion. Then we move on to the second matchup. Oh, let me see actually his points, because I'm interested to see. 99 points on that one. Yeah, let's go. You get. Then he goes, can you do a mech green tide? A mech or green tide? No, I don't think that's a thing. I'm not sure. Maybe after stream, I think about it a little longer. So then we have his second matchup was Death Guard Plague Company. Ooh, okay. And he called it the big boys. So let's see what's up. We have a Death Guard Terminator Sorcerer, very common tech piece for that reduction of damage. We have a Lord of Virulence, which is, this guy for his Peg Spewer is usually pretty potent into Orks and Ork boys. Mortadion for ignoring modifiers, of course, and then Typhus for throwing mortal wounds and maybe leading Poxwalkers. We have 2 units of Cultists, followed by 3 units of Death Shroud Terminators. One's a 3-man unit, and then 2 of them are the full 6-man units. These guys are potent into Orks, as they do have anti-infantry pistols on their gauntlets, and then they also have the ability to do sweep attacks. So we don't necessarily love them, but they also don't have Armor of Contempt. So we have 2 units of bloat drones. This is really how they like to spread the contagion and play the game early. 1 war boss on the wall can chew one of these guys up, so they're not that durable. But other than that, they're everywhere, packs and contagion. 2 units of Nurglings for that infiltration. In mind, they might use it for the -1 to hit aura and really try to double stack that on you with the contagion. But sometimes people just throw these away. It really just comes down to how skilled the character is. Again, like I said, you're gonna we'll be glad you have flash gets, because if these guys chose to just put them behind the death shroud and walk towards you, and you didn't have flash gets, you couldn't do anything about it. These guys can't move through building like ruin walls. Their Nurglings can't, so that's where flash gets can actually take advantage of them. We have Waaaghtaktiks and then 2 units of Brigands. Brigands are common because they'll still be happy that someone gets in contagion range, and they are pretty self-sufficient. Waaaghtaktiks, because he cuts OC on enemies that get within range of him. So he's pretty common in this detachment too. So he does matter into Ork Boys, because if Waaaghtaktiks gets close to Ork Boys, he cuts their OC to 1. I don't think that's enough to swing it, because he only has cultists that have OC in this. But nonetheless, quite potent yet again. Yet again, like I said, if you didn't have something like a gas to hold the line and punch people off you, you would have a hard time dealing with this. As I've done this similar matchup, and with or without gas means these guys will constantly keep chipping away at you after you don't really finish the unit off outside of the wall, and then you're kind of just stuck high and dry, because they run around killing your scoring units while you're stuck just holding combat with one of their, big durable Morty or a couple units of Death Shroud. But Gaz makes it so you can actually punch through the Death Shroud. Not always likely, but it can happen, and you're still beating them on primary. So love to see that he ended up doing that as well. Mr. Joel Davis with a 96-point win, pulling it out again on them. Then we move on to his third game, where he had the Gene Stealer Cultist. Oh, so everybody's all hyped up on Gene Stealers right now. This is the Enraptured Damnation. So I think this is that, again, the Grotmus detachment, where they can mix demons, Tyrannid, Lone Ops, and certain models and units in their detachment with the Gene Stealers. So we have a Death Leaper, 2 Benefactus, 2 Biophages, and then a Locust. We have only 2 10-man bricks of the auto pistols, followed by 2 5-man units of the hand flamers, 3 by 10 gargoyles. Ooh, talking about move blocking you get. You know what I'm saying? You guys know. So gargoyles, they can move, obviously, because they fly, little boogie boys. Once they shoot, they have actually assault, so they can actually move again via their data sheet ability. So keep in mind, move 12 inches, they have assault, so they could advance on that. So 12 d6 movement, and then they shoot, then they get to move again. Even if one little can shoot one little thing, they're move. So really good for move blocking, especially into Orks. If you didn't have flash gets, you'd have to start constantly charging these guys. And you could pull off a cheeky Overwatch if they moved preemptively in front of your flash gets and you were standing out in the open for some reason. They end their 2 OC each, so I'm going to keep in mind too. We have 1 unit of Metaforce with hand flamers, a pure stain unit of Gene Stealers, 2 by 2 Achilles Ridge Runners, and then an individual Ridge Runners. This is like most of their shooting alongside the 2 individual Goliath Rock Grinders. Not that potent. They do have like I think it's crossfire stratagem. Oh, maybe not in this detachment actually. So nonetheless, I would say that's one thing that's missing, is this isn't the most potent in shooting. And this seems to be relying a lot on the Tyrannids kind of holding the line, playing the game early, and then allowing you to regen guys back into the army. Not sure if that works for Green Tide, because once you crash into them, you'll just keep chewing up board space. And it looks like he kind of did that with a 92-point win. Gene Stealers can be potent. They can, GSC, the cultists can be potent, but I think Orks are just one of those armies that are like, even if you diminish me a little bit, I'm going to punch right through your unit, take up this space, occupy the board, you come back down, you hit me again, I'm going to eat that too. Still my leftover units to beat the crap out of you. And yeah, I love it. So then we move on to his 4th game. We have Necrons. This is Star Shatter. Sorry, Arsenal. I don't know why I said that. Again, these guys have been hit with a nerf from the data slate changes, so their stratagems cost more, and I don't think you'll see a Silent King on this one. But in this list, they didn't have the Silent King already. So we have Emotech the Stormlord, a Catacomb Command Barge, followed by Hexmark Destroyer, Locust Lord, a 10-man unit of Warriors, 2 5-man units of Flayed Ones, 3 of the 2 2 by 3 Ophidian destroyers, no, 3 by 3 Ophidian destroyers, followed by 1 Scorpack destroyer, a Locust destroyer, and then a 6-man unit, and then a 3-man unit of heavy Locust destroyers, followed by 3 Doomsday Arcs and a Ghost Arc. Woo! My boy was thinking outside the box. I can see this being kind of an interesting, versatile tech to go into. Since you're not going to have the Silent King as much anymore, you do want something that can start to play the game earlier and move around the field, trying to draw out people so you can shoot the heck out of them with your boats and stuff like that. So this might be the future, not necessarily, sir, because that is a new archetype that I haven't seen. But I would say that from what I do know about the Ophidian destroyers, they hit, but they don't hit that hard. And none of these units are big one-shotting activation units, which means if they do charge into Ork boys, simply interrupt. You're murking them with your boys, your even your weird boy punches and your knob punches on the wall. Absolutely blending these guys. Don't have good defensive buffs. Rerolling wounds into them would be devastating and kill multiple of these units if they charged you all at once. Yeah, and even the Doomsday Arcs don't kill boys necessarily great if you just have Feeling No Pinch, which they do. So yeah, awesome. I think that, as you know, Green Tide, these people just don't really have tools to chew all the way through Green Tide. You can see he had 80 points here because I'm sure he did get charged into, pushed back a little bit, and had to punch his way out of it. But it doesn't. I don't think it was like a winning recipe. It might have been Purge the Foe or something to help, offset the score. Not necessarily sure, but hey, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was his hardest game. Not really seeing it though in that variation of Scatterstar, but our boy was brilliant to tech into Green Tide going into this meta. Then he go into his 5th game. So his 5th game, he has the Grey Knights. Yeah, make sure. So he has the Grey Knights. This is a Warp Bane Task Force. Again, the new detachment. Looking to do Mortal Wound heavy and get the initiative, really beat the crap out of you. So we have a Brother Captain Stern, followed by Brother Chaplain, Castle and Crow for those +3 to his charges, I believe, comes out of Deep Strike. Only 1 Grandmaster. Oh no, Drago does that. Drago does the +3 into your charges. And then 1 Grandmaster Nemesis Dread Knight. Castle and Crow is, I think, shooting buffs. So we have a big brick of Terminators, followed by 1 5-man unit of Strike Force Terminators. We have the Strike Squad, followed by a Razorback, okay, and then a Rhino. A big Purifier Squad, that's for Castle and Crow. I believe he gives them +1 to hit and another shot, I'm pretty sure, on their side weapons. Then you what's that? Flamer or something like that? Purifying Flame, something like that. Yeah. Then you have a 5-man units of Flamers, followed by a Caladius Assassin. From what I've experienced with these guys as well, is they just come down, they try to hammer you with the initiative and do a ton of damage to cripple your army. If that doesn't work out for them, then they simply get beat up because they don't have the reactionary move, they don't have the Mist of Deimos, they don't have any of that jinky stuff that they do in the other detachment, which means once they just get off that damage on you, they are there to take the clap back. And surely they end up doing that. Because they understand as Grey Knight players is that they cannot let you just sit there and throw them back on scoring constantly. They have to come down, and that's how their whole army works. So they really don't have any other option than to come out and just meet you. You can try to mitigate it by throwing like trucks out, I guess, to stop Drago from hitting you. Storm Boys, maybe, Grots. If you have, but he only has 1 unit of Grots here, so he can't even do that. So you could end up using your flash kits a little bit as kind of like the first wave so that you don't lose your mobs early. As your flash kits aren't that useful in this matchup, as all these guys have a 2-up armor save. Every single unit in this matchup has an armor save of a 2-up, covers everywhere. So your flash kits aren't really going to go off. They're going to pop lethal, into a strike squad just to kill it, and then be happy that they kill a couple things here and there. 5-man unit purifiers, they're happy to do it. After that, they get the initiative taken on them. The trucks get deleted. The flash gets deleted. And then your boys and gas can hopefully run through and kind of swing the game from there. Not necessarily sure, but that's how their detachment works. They just jump down, get the initiative. You beat the crap out of you. Everyone's led by a character. So great job there, Mr. Joel. Mr. Joel with a 90-point win right there. So right here, he's cooking. 90, 99, 96. 99, 96, 92, 80, 90. And then for his last game, 6. He goes into the Dracari. So this guy, how do you even get Nicholas? Okay, nice job, Nicholas. Just getting this far with, Aldadi and Dracari mix. All right, so we have 2 Archons, and then 2 Beastmasters, followed by a Trope Master. I've showed these guys a bunch of times on the channel. These Beastmasters catch people off guard. They have, I think, 7 models in their unit. They move 10. They scout 9, I believe. Some guys have 2 wounds. Some of you guys have 3. I think one has 4. Really good at just blocking you in your own deployment zone. So that's a big factor when they could just run up on you and entrap, almost wolf gel type other people's armies that they don't have infiltrate. Then we have a unit of Cabalite Warriors, 2 of those. 2 Court of the Archons, 2 5-man units of Mandrakes. This is their infiltration again. There's their scoring. They can go up you down you like Space Marine Scouts. And then 2 units of Scourges for their anti-tank. They fire and fade. They shoot and then they move away. Followed by 1 trope for that character that we had of the Harley Quinns. Pretty cool. 3 individual Chronos, and then a 2x2 Talos and a Void Raven Bomber. So Orks can't really do anything about Void Raven Bomber, but I'll tell you what, they don't like to just land anywhere when there's just boy mobs everywhere on the field. There aren't as many in this detachment, so they will find places in the back line. It does make things a little more complicated for you to hold your back line in a sense, even though you can sticky it, because they can just drop down and just shoot that Gretchen away. And then get your weird boy with the Void Raven Bomber. You do have Snick Rod at least. The hope is just stay out of that. These Chronos are pretty cool, individual characters for that case too. But all in all, one thing that these guys do run out of is, it sounds weird, but they do have a little bit of a killing potential problem. They do have the ability, but because they don't have a bunch of rerolls innately, and their units are all made of glass. You have flash kits in this matchup again. Flash is coming in clutch because if any of these units are exploded, they're deleting them. Did they have their transports? They don't even have that many transports. They have like no transports in this one. They traded out all their transports for just like Chronos and stuff. Really interesting tech. Can't say I know too much about it. Only a handful of reps into Dark Eldar anyways. But what I can say is they're absolutely soft as glass cannons. Once they go into, they're gone. And all it takes is one of the boy units to interrupt after getting charged by multiple of these guys. They get picked up. They're constantly scoring primary, and they're just keeping those dudes back in their own deployment zone. I love it. And in this case, my boy loved it too because he got a 95-point win into that Dracodi matchup. So shout out to Mr. Joel Davis and his Green Tide. So let's go over his list one more time. We have Boss Snickra, because you absolutely need him to help you score secondaries since you can't do fixed. You can't score a secondary. Well, you can't do fixes easily by doing the old-fashioned Green Tide of doing cleanse and some kind of deploy and staying in combat with pistols and doing secondaries. Can't do that anymore. Therefore, you absolutely need stuff like Boss Snickra and the individual Weird Boy. Gazgul Thraka, because the meta is absolutely killy and durable. Your boys can't sit there just take a pounding from units that can fall back and shoot or fall back and charge constantly. Therefore, they act a little bit as a net, and then Gaz allows you and whatever remaining mobs to gang up on that unit and delete it. So take advantage of that. The 2x10 flash kits, great tech piece as well. Like I said, we've seen several armies on this table that were running 10-man units of T3 units. And of course, flash kits do great into deleting those, whether it's with the wand fighting or just shooting with their volume of attacks. And they give you the ability to pick up these screens, something like a Nurgling unit that gives an aura -1 to hit. You absolutely love them for their versatility and the shooting that they bring you just enough so that they can help you interact with other units in the game. That's the biggest feedback I've heard all in all from Green Tide for the entire edition, is that when you add a little bit of shooting, it gives you way more options on turns when people are actually really good at movement shenanigans. So great job by Mr. Joel Davis. Love the Gaz inclusion and love the Weird Boy tech for that secondary and possible secret mission scoring. Whoa, to Mr. Joel Davis with the true Green Tide. And then we move on. So now we have Mr. Joshua Callward. So Mr. Joshua Callward has actually been shown on the channel several times. So I'm not familiar with the game myself as necessarily, but we've seen him around the block. We've crossed paths with Mr. Joshua. So let me see. Make sure I'm pulling it up. Yeah. So he did stick with a nice, good old-fashioned War Horde. So everybody who's playing with the new shiny toys, my boy said I'm playing with the new data sheets, but sticking to the old faithful detachment. Can't knock him for it, right? Can't knock him for it. Don't fix what ain't broken. So, well, speaking of broken, I mean, some people might argue. No, I'm just kidding. So he's the first boy we've seen that is taking all the new data sheets. And as you can see, he brought back the good old-fashioned trucks. Bam. I see in the chat. I see you, Arcane. So Mr. Joshua has Gazgul Thraka, this is absolutely his favorite detachment. Love Gaz and absolute so many detachments, but this is his favorite detachment. Taking lethal, sustain 5+s, and just burning through people, having here we go access. I love it because he can just act as an absolute missile. 2 individual beast bosses for those 2 10-man units of beast Nagaboyses. 3 war bosses, 1 with follow me lads for that extra mobility, 6 trucks, 1 unit of Breaker Boys, where he has the smash hammers and then a tank hammer. 1 burner boy unit where the spanner took a custom mega blaster. 3 individual small units of Gretchen. 2 mega knobs for Gazgul Thraka. Again, he took the custom shooter and the power claws. 2 5-man units of knobs and power claws, followed by 2 individual tank buster units. They did have the hammers and the pistol for their knob, from what I believe I seen. So right here, he didn't bring the absolute every single breaker boy that he could. I think that's a good idea. I really do. There's a few reasons for that. One is that breaker boys have almost no volume, only no volume. So only 2 attacks each guy means on the walls they're really only time to go. In this detachment, you are at least are favored with the fact that they can fight on death. So if your gas goes, then you can just spend 2 CP to fight on death with these guys, so you still get the value return. And I've been saying that since the unit really came out. I found that they're really susceptible to Overwatch, and they really can only go off on the wall turn. Therefore, having 1 unit just for that wall turn, whether he's getting Unbridled Carnage or he's getting activated first or he's fighting on death, that's really where these guys are shining. In other cases, you have 5-man units of knobs with power claws. These guys, simply because they have more attacks, can go and act upon their own. -1 to wound means at least if they get into a fight with something like a Space Marine, they're not really scared of that interaction as much, and the war boss might just go off on his own. And they're cheaper, right? They're cheaper. Just going for breaker boys and war boss kind of breaks the bank. And a lot of the time, what I've also seen is the beast snagger boys and the beast bosses absolutely devastate vehicles efficiently enough that you don't have to pay the price point for the breaker boys, and you're not really worried about these 4-up invulns that are lagging around the meta everywhere, right? That's something that breaker boys fall into an issue with as well, is that people have 4-up invulns or 3-up armors, 2-up armor saves with armor of contempt access, so they're taking 3-up armor saves. I've still found so much value in simply taking a beast boss, giving him sustain, not even on the wall, letting him go off and interact with an enemy vehicle or monster, whatever it may be, and executing that damage. In a War Horde detachment where you can drop Unbridled Carnage, you can actually access the beast boss to go off outside of the wall and still get these trades and fights off. Something that breaker boys can't do, and beast bosses with beast snaggle boys are simply cheaper at doing. And then if you have these infantry or something, just skirmishing units, then you have the knobs that can go into them. So instead of paying for just like the expensive kind of duality all-purpose tool, quote unquote, like a breaker boy might be perceived as, he didn't do that. He said, I got my beast bosses that are a little bit cheaper, that are good at killing stuff outside of the wall, that require a lot of damage, and then I have my knobs that are good at killing armor and can kill stuff outside the wall or during the wall as well. All these guys are getting packed up in trucks. Keep in mind, something like a burner boy and breaker boy unit could go together in a truck, because that would be 7 models from the breaker boys plus the boss, and then the burner boys are simply 5, right? Other than that, something like a tank buster unit might have to get his own truck if he had a shock attack guns attached, but he doesn't. Therefore, you can take a war boss plus tank busters and the war boss from the 5-man knobs, put them all in the same truck. That's 12 slots. So you can see a SWAT team looking like 5 knobs, war boss, and then tank busters. That could be pretty sick, because the tank busters can help the knobs pop something that they typically wouldn't be able to fight. That's maybe damn T10 or whatever, because they can run out, do some bomb squigs to it. They can shoot it. They can throw a grenade at it, and then the knobs can charge at it and possibly pull it down as well. Pretty cool. Not something that we're seeing a lot in the meta. Knobs were kind of shaken off already, and as we talked about when we presented the detachments and the new data sheets, will they overtake them in the meta? It looks like there's plenty of space for both these gets on the list alongside the tank busters too. Very exciting. 6 trucks though has been working since Index Hammer, right? Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that. So now we move on to his path to victory. Oh yeah, I see you, Mark. What's up, Mark? So Mark, I like that. Mark said, Surprising lack of commandos this week. I'm very curious. That is a good point, Masa. Very small amount of commandos. I think people just decided to pick more stuff and more killing, and we have access to the wall in a different timing, and I think people just take advantage of that. So this event said -2, so maybe that 38 people, I'm guessing. So he ended up getting first. Ooh, good scores, good scores. I'm interested in that game too. So let's take a good path to victory look. So in his first game, he has Eldari Uthway. Okay, that's cool. So we have an Artark, Avatar Came, Death Jester, Farseer, Cassandras, Spirits here, followed by Guardians, a Dark Reaper, 2 individual Falcons, which are kind of cool. They got like cannons and small arms fire, little cool looking vehicles. About Howling Banshees, Rangers, 2 units of Scorpions, a Swooping Hawk, Warp Spiders, only a 1 Warp Walker, a 5-man unit of Warp Spiders, and then a Wraith Guard unit with Wraith Cannons. Something I was speaking about with the Beast Bosses, for example, right here, this Warwalker unit, right? This Warwalker unit, that probably getting wrecked by a Breaker Boy unit as well. But a Beast Boss unit is equally killing this without the wall. Very unlikely to whiff with the Snagga support. And he's just dropping OC in a big line of bodies there if he has to as well. Not necessarily a great trade, but something like that where Eldar sometimes try to hold a line with like him and the Avatar. In this case, it's like, nah, bro. My boys would kill that thing. My Beast Boss is going to him, and it just gets bad trade for them. All in all, whenever I've had to deal with Eldar, most people do. You just absolutely crush them when you have so many trucks. Hard for them to focus down the truck and then the stuff inside of it as well. They don't want to charge you because they don't really have good fighting into Orks because we're like T5 and stuff. And we can have the invuln, which if they whiff, a couple dudes left over kills their unit. It is a hard matchup for Eldar. So Josh scored a big 100. Having all those trucks, I'm sure, was pivotal. Then we go into this game 2. This is lowest score, so let's see what's up. He is dealing with the Death Watch. Ooh, so Death Watch is the new drop miss detachment. People are already whispering about this detachment. We'll see if it keeps making an appearance. Quite killy. So we have and I used to have this army. I got rid of it like at the start of this edition. So we had a captain in Gravis armor with the Tomb of Ectoclates, a Judiciar, and then a Watchmaster with the Beacon Angelus. Oh, and the Judiciar has the Thief of Secrets. Something I want to point out, the captain, I think he's always underappreciated. He has damage reduction built in. I think it's pretty cool. And the Watchmaster, I think, gives strats kind of like a captain. So we have a Assault Intercessor squad, followed by a Deathwatch veteran unit. So this looks like this is the Primaris Intercessor version, as they have Infernus. Oh no, they have Infernus Heavy Bolters. Okay, so they have 4 dudes with Thunder Hammers, and then they have the Frag Cannon with the Infernus Heavy Bolter. A Xenos Blade on the Sergeant, it looks like. So this is like a combined melee unit, mostly a hammers, and then a little bit of these special weapons to hurt people. We have an Intercessor squad for the sticky objective, Impulsor, followed by a Assault Jump Pack Intercessor squad. Here he has a Deathwatch Terminator squad. So it looks like he has only 1 Storm Shield in this. Oh, 2 Storm Shields, because the Sergeant has 1, and then another dude has 1. But he has 3 Cyclone missile launchers in this one little 5-man unit. That's pretty sick. And then a Thunderhammer. And then we have a Fortis kill team. This variation, this is their Primaris. This is their Primaris. So the other one, the battle line unit, is like their firstborn. Fortis looks like this is their Primaris version. So the Sergeant has a Thunderhammer. They have 2 basic intercessors in there. Those are like their blade of wounds. So if you damage them, they'll just pick those guys up first. And then they have 4 dudes with plasma inceptors, so kind of like Hellblasters built into the unit. And then a super frag launcher and some kind of Castellan launcher. So just some version of launchers from other, I think these are the Devastator units. So then he has a gunline unit there, followed by an Indomitor kill team, which is the Gravis heavy dude. So this is probably where the heavy captain is going. The reason he's going here is because he has the twin power saws in this kill saws in this unit, and he has the Eradicator melter rifles in that unit. And then the heavy intercessors to act as the blade of wounds. Probably love to see that. So cool. Okay. And then he's followed by Infiltrator squad and then a Talon strike squad, with probably just jump pack guys. Yeah, it's just jump pack guys with close combat weapons and plasma exterminators. And then individual assassin. So probably didn't know how to exactly attack each one of these units, and the weird profiles between each one, which they have like built-in ablative wounds of units that are willing to die, and different weapons, means that each one of these kill teams can effectively deal with like an orc truck and then possibly fight the stuff inside of it. If they don't get the initiative because you get to fight back, they can lose some of those units outside of the wall. So let's say a 5-man unit of knobs into one of these Indomitor kill teams. Sure, he can kill probably 2 or 3 of those heavy intercessors, but the leftover heavy, Gravis guys went to killing them in combat, for example. So really weird, and they have the devastating weapons, such like that, frag launchers and then terminators to pop little trucks on their own with one little terminator unit. So overall, great job, Josh, for pulling that one up. Joshua, because when knowing is half the battle. The knowledge of your opponent is a big deal. So not really having all the tools or probably reps into this is a big deal. So great job there. Was a 66-point win, but great job by just pulling it off into something that people aren't familiar with, because that's what's always going to get you, right? Yeah. Then he moves on to his game 3, where he goes into Mr. Scott into the combined regiment. This is the Astra Militarum. Before we do that, let me see him just get with the super chat. Mr. Sam White ran that exact unit in tactical yesterday for my 3rd Buster unit, 5 knobs with power claws, plus 6 busters. Boss orders to the busters. It was a great value. So that's a great idea right there, because you might not need the orders in the going onto the knobs every single time. There's a chance that if both of you guys get out at the same time, you turn around and yell an order at the tank buster that they need +1 to hit into another enemy elite infantry unit, or they might not even need a buff because they already get +1 to hit and wound. So shout out to you, Mr. Sam White. That is a very cheeky and smart SWAT team to absolutely use, and that's cool that it can be used in multiple detachments. So whoa to Mr. Sam White. He needed extra points, and here he had 3 sags, so he absolutely loved the combo. Awesome. And see, that's what's really cool right now for all you orc players. There's so many different ways to be playing all of these things you're seeing. So if you don't have stuff you don't see, that's fine. I'm sure that if you enter the Discord or Facebook, we can help solve some things for you. Thanks, Mr. Sam White. So we have Astra Militarum. He has 2 Death Corps Marshals, followed by Mr. Guns Ghost. This is a toolboxy Swiss Army knife unit. Then we have Tank Commander Ursula Creed and Iron Hand Strachan. Ooh, love me some Iron Hand Strachan. My boy can fight. My boy can get stuck in. He can crump. All right, he can crump. Like to see it. So you're gonna put Strachan with this big fat unit of Katachan Jungle Fighters. And then he has 2 of those units of Scouting Jungle Fighters, followed by 2 20-man units of the Death Corps of Kriegs, where they get the marshals. These guys have feel no pains, and they can bring guys back to life. Then you have just a basic infantry squad, which I think is gone in the new book. 2 Hydras. So Hydras are underappreciated. This is like anti-flyer potential, but in all, you're really just getting a bunch of autocannons and like a tank, like a weak tank chassis for 85 points. So that's just awesome tech. You have a Lehman Russ battle tank. So this is like the basic tank, followed by, so it has the cannon on it. And then you have, or does it? 2 Maltas, battle cannon on it. Then you have Exterminator, which is the autocannon version, a Rogel Dorn, which is all-purpose crump and gun, Scout, and then 2 Scout Sentinels. Quite elite, little bit tank, but not that bad. He mostly brought big elite bricks. But remember, you can actually bring these 20-man units back to life, so you got to be careful. We don't see the scions and the indirect, so it's not the most toxic version of guard. This is kind of like more of their older index version archetype, which was still quite powerful into orcs, for example, when he doesn't have any infiltrating or scouts, and he has these 20-man units. So you don't want to take knobs necessarily into a 20-man unit of Krieg or Katachans. So this would be a quite cunning game to overcome Mr. Joshua Colward, because best thing you got is Beast Snagger boys chewing through those guys on the wall. But what kind of wall and when are you calling it into this kind of army? Is it just turn 1 and you just hope you commit full throttle into them? You go first, throw all the trucks into them, get out, disembark, and charge them? I mean, that really might have to be the case. Because if you prolong this fight and he keeps bringing guys back and just chewing into each one of your units systematically, that can end up putting you on the back foot. So I'm inclined to believe Joshua kind of read the situation here, was quite aggressive, hopefully win first. understood that he had to chew away, get those big 20 bricks out of the way, and then get stuck into the tanks as quickly as possible. Luckily, you have tank busters, so there's a chance he actually was already popping any of those tanks after the first exposure. So love to see it. Mr. Joshua Colward, again, your cunning tactical get, so you pulled that one off. That was his 4th game, so on that he got a 74-point win. The game before they got 100. I should have showed that, sorry. And then we go into his 5th game, where he's going into the World Eaters. So the World Eaters, this is their new detachment as well. The one thing about this detachment is that all their buffs that they would have to roll for randomly, they pretty much just get to pick 3 of them for different units, and then boom, they're efficient. So that's pretty cool. You know, as orc players, we can relate to the fact that, like, oh, all of your stuff is random. That doesn't really conducive to a last battle plan. Almost missed something. That was just, okay. Almost missed myself up, boys. Sorry. So this 3rd game was against the guard player, where he got 100. That's why I was thinking he was aggressive. And then his 4th game is into this Aeldari Craft Worlds list. I got a little ahead of myself. So World Eaters is last game. First, we're gonna do this Aeldari Craft World list. So he went into an Uthran, Eldar Uthran. Sorry, I always mess up his name. Iliac Nightspear, Genzar, Cassandras, 2 Artarks, Farseer, Skyrunner. Okay, so he's playing. Okay, not too familiar with this style, so pretty cool on that. We have a Farseer, Skyrunner, Corsairs, 1 unit of Void Reavers, a 3-man unit, 1 unit of Storm Guardians, 2 units of Storm Guardians, excuse me, Banshees, 3x5 Striking Scorpions, 2x5 Swooping Hawks, a Warlock Conclave, 1 Falcon, 2 Vipers, and then 2 Wave Serpents. I'll be direct, not necessarily sure how this one was going. What you can tell is that he has a lot of small units and small, like, little vehicles and biker. This is a Wave Serpent, which is a transport for those Storm Guardians. So in this case, it looks like they're trying to play a similar version to what we're doing, with all our transports taking up space, making you kill our transports and our vehicles, and then getting out with these skirmishing units. In my opinion, we just do that better than them. They're fast and everything, and they can shoot effectively, but they can't follow up with, once they shoot us, they pop the trucks. In our cases, we'll, you know, pop them with tank busters, charge them. Even if we charge and pop their vehicles or their durable chassis, or any of their what they would like to hold the line with. Let's see, they don't even really have anything like that, so they actually get ran into, right? Yeah, they didn't even bring like an avatar or anything. So in this case, it's all about pressure. But they can actually systematically, because they're so fast, focus down each one of your trucks if they go island off by themselves. So this army looks like it's looking to dismantle their enemies with their own speed, with their own transports, with their own MSU, and control the pace of the game in that case. Just not sure if it's like enough to really overcome like 6 orc trucks with the Gazgul and beast bosses and so much killing potential, because Eldar just kind of don't have all the killing potential they used to have, is what we would say. Nonetheless, it was a 74-point win. So, you know, whatever tech piece I'm not seeing in there definitely paid off for that gig, because it was a good game. Then we move on to his last game, which is the World Eaters, like I mentioned earlier, where they get to enjoy the fact that they get to enjoy their detachment now. Their detachment, you know, abilities. So all these guys also do get blood surge on anybody, just about anybody on this detachment. They get ability to get twin linked on just about anybody that fights. And I think there's something else that was pretty awesome on top of picking those units. So those are stratagems. So they have really good stratagems as well. We have Angron, Lord Invocatus, a Juggernaut, and the Master of Executions. Juggernaut's just there to help you kind of scout up in with 8-bound. Then we have a Jackal unit, 2 Khorne Berserker units. One is with the Master of Executions for that fight first. Then we have a Rhino, followed by, that's obviously for the Master of Executions boy, followed by a big brick of 8-bound, and then a big brick of Terminators. So this is super elite version of World Eaters. But because everything can do its thing quite reliably, it means that they're just going to run across the battlefield, beat the crap of whatever you've got. And so many of these these armies are just like, I stand there in my gun line and shoot the heck out of you. Like when we were talking about Scatterstar and Necrons, they would hate to see this version of World Eaters list crashing down on them, but Orks don't, because we're like, oh, and Josh was playing Warhorde, so he could take advantage of Fight on Death, like we were saying. He's pretty dang fast as well, and he has all these trucks, and these guys have no shooting, so they have to essentially run into your trucks, or you can use your trucks to hold them back, and things get pretty cheeky. So tank buzzers feel really good into 8-pound as well. Flat damage 3, and then you can just be like, oh, sorry, dude, here's some bomb squig, stuff like that. You can actually deal with Anachron, soften him up, and then one individual beast boss can just crack him outside of the game, and then maybe he doesn't come back. Boom, game's over for them. So shout out to Mr. Joshua. Let's see what his score was in this one. An 88-point win by Mr. Joshua Colward to stomp out the World Eaters, because this guy got a 29-point win there. So he crumped them. Not trying to be mean. And like 57 on that guy. So he took out number 2 and number 3 to get to the top. So great job there, Mr. Joshua Colward, with his Warhorde detachment, kicking it classic here. Ain't fixing what ain't broken. So he comes to us with those truck spam. We have Gazgul Thraka, 2 beast bosses with the 10 base snagger boys each. A war boss with Follow Me Lads, followed by 2 other war bosses. We have the Breaker Boy unit, only 1. A Burner Boy unit, 3 individual Gretchen units, 2 Mega Knobs for Gaz, which bring Power Claws and Combi Shooter, 2 5-man units of Knobs with Power Claws, followed by 2 Tank Buster units with no leaders, acting as SWAT team support. So this is a pretty awesome list from Mr. Joshua Colward. Way to incorporate the new data sheets without overemphasizing or requiring them to carry your list. I think this should be pretty motivating for people if they got the box, or if they look to get it in the future, or people who are just like me that have some tank busters lying around, and I can maybe get some hands on one breaker boy unit. So Joshua Colward, great job there, kicking it classic. Love to see you doing great. Whoa, from Mr. Joshua Colward and his Warhorde mobs. So we move on. So now we getting it Taktikal Brigade up in here, boys. So we've already done 3 undefeated orc lists, boy. Oof! And I see in the chat right here going off, guys. You guys got anything? I'm keeping up with it. So we have Mr. Mark Morrow's Taktikal Brigade. So we're getting some flavors of Taktikal Brigade. So the next 2, the last 2 lists we're going to be covering are both Taktikal Brigades. I want to keep things entertaining and exciting by showing off the fact that people are having success without even using the new detachment, because a lot of the conception right now is that the new detachment's kind of carrying, and maybe the new data sheets are hard carrying. In this case, we can see that people are doing a great job with both. It's, it's having some of them or having none of them, and in this case, again, we can see he has some of them, not carrying his whole list as an all for Mr. Mark Morrow. So Mr. Mark Morrow, let me see, I have this right here. Let's take a look. So he's running Taktiks Brigade. He got first place at the Warp Storm. Right here, this is actually using the WTC scoring system of differentials. So a little bit different to us. That means he was using WTC terrain, which does change a couple things up here and there, but we try to keep in mind as we go through. But what I will say is that's what makes it more understanding that he didn't have Gaz on this list, for example. One thing pointed out to me by my own Discord and my own table at home is Gaz doesn't hide necessarily well on that kind of terrain in the mid table. He kind of gets shot up a little easy. So, it is what it is. So nonetheless, Mr. Mark ran a Beast Boss followed by 3 Big Mechs with shock attack guns. One of them had Mech Captain. The other one had Gob Boomer. So that's interesting, right? Instead of having a slow low character with Gob Boomer, he actually gave it to a unit that typically, or a unit character that typically you would think would give it to themselves. But in some matchups, he doesn't need to give the order to himself. So it's, good foresight to understand that, hey, I can throw this to someone else. Not every time will I need it. Then we have 3 war bosses, one as the warlord. We have the 10-man Snagger Boy unit, followed by a 5-man unit of Storm Boys, and here we have 6 trucks on this list. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, make sure I didn't put 7 on there, but it is 6 trucks. Yeah, and I double checked because I was like, more boy. So we had 5 trucks earlier, and now we're going 6 trucks. Crazy to see that, but not in the way that it's unexpected. Just that it's like, oh, It's legit. Everybody's definitely teching into trucks. Some are excited, some hate it. Then we have 2 units of Breaker Boys. Yeah, one of them was actually using the Knuckle Busters. Yeah, Knuckle Busters up in here. And then both of them had the Boss Snob with a rocket pistol and a hammer. The second Breaker Boy unit didn't have the Knuckle Busters. Everyone just had the hammers, and then one had the tank hammer. We have a Burner Boy unit. He was used, the Spanner was using custom Mega Blaster. A 10-man unit of Flash Gits, followed by a 2 minimum size unit of Gretchen. A max size unit of Ludas. Both Spanners had the custom Mega Blasters. And then we have a 5-man unit of Knobs with Power Claws, followed by a individual unit of Tank Busters with their rockets, and the leader did have actually a tank hammer. So something to point out here again is the fact that people are bringing Ludas. So a lot of the time, people were assuming that Ludas are just not having a place anymore because tank busters are so potent. But in reality, they're ranged, they're a little bit cheaper, make them just versatile as well. The fact that they already have innate rerolls, people are still finding good value from them. Very, very happy to see Mark actually perform so well with Ludas, because a lot of people were like, oh man, all I got is Ludas. Can I do this? Absolutely, you can. And he showed him. So, of course, you have Tank Busters getting a shock attack gun. The Ludas are getting a shock attack gun. And then the Flash Gits are getting the Big Mech shock attack gun for the Mech Captain shock attack gun for the reroll hits. So, I like to see that. Another thing here is the Breaker Boy units each get a War Boss, and the Knob gets a War Boss too. And a lot of these guys are getting their own trucks because the characters are killing each one of these killy units. But Burner Boys, for example, can get in a truck and support someone in that case. But that's also why he paid for so many trucks. Because since these guys are 7-man units, when they get leaders incorporated them, it means that they have less options for who can SWAT team with them. A lot of the times, that's why we're seeing Burner Boys being brought into play. They end up being just cheap enough that they can fit in there and not break the bank like another 5-man unit of Flash Gits ends up doing. So you're going to see Burner Boys a lot of the time just kind of teched in for that reason. Love to see it, Mr. Mark Morrow. And like I said, Beast Boss still finding his way on all these lists because he's so proficient that he can pop sustain in this detachment as well. And he works so well outside of the wall. So let's go into Mark Morrow's path to victory. So we have his first game, where he goes into the Grey Knights. This is the Warpbane Task Force. So this detachment is way easier for us to handle as Orks as a whole because they don't get to reactively move away from us or jump back into deep strike with the stratagem, which means once we're ready to close the distance, we can. And we have access to tank busters. Huge difference in this kind of matchup. So we have Castle and Crow, 2 Grandmaster Dread Knights, a Strike Marine, followed by 2 Inceptor units, 3 Dread Knights, a big brick of Purifier squads, a 5-man unit Purifier squads, and then a Clades Assassin. So a lot of the time here, like I said, they're trying to get the initiative on you, whether it's dropping characters close to you or Castle and Crow dropping down and shooting you to bits. These Dread Knights are going to have to focus on your trucks. They could totally whiff, which sucks for them. They can't really reliably pop these many trucks that quickly. And then once it's go time, our Git's going to, be able to disembark and destroy them. The one thing I will say is those, WTC maps do somewhat make it harder to hide in a lot of cases, especially if they do pop your truck. Now you're just kind of in the open. The other thing that's pretty potent as well when you're going into Grey Knights and they have so many Dread Knights is that they can overwatch you so horrifically when you're playing with something like Breaker Boys, Knob Boys, just basic boys, for example. They overwatch you with flamers, and these guys get to re-roll if they're in their own shadow, which means overwatch is so disgusting on any of these units, and that's something Breaker Boys are so easy to get. So those WC terrains are a little bit hard to actually hide your unit fully in once your truck even gets popped, or if you're going to go charge them. So good positioning matters a lot in this. And they have the ability to pop trucks from just the fact that they re-roll. So there is a chance they can whiff, but a lot of the time one Dread Knight does pop a truck has so many re-rolls built into it. And you have like pure file support to probably even shoot your infantry after that. Not to mention that Ludas become less proficient here because so much 2-up armor saves. And when you're using the Breaker Boys, again, the fact that this whole army is at a 3-up armor save, they can pop armor or contempt, means you could get super unlucky with Breaker Boys and not even pop a Dread Knight. Nonetheless, our boy did pull this game out. And it was a close game, as he ended up getting 11 points. So in the WTC, it would be 10-10 would be a tie. So that means he won by 1 point, which would be about a 10-point differential in the game. Great freaking job there, Mr. Mark, because you had a lot of good tools into what the meta would be, but this is one of those weird specific matchups where it's like, ooh, I wish I had more tank busters and maybe even beast bosses, because beast bosses, they're not subject to being so devastated by Overwatch. Yes, you can lose 5-6 of your snagger boys going in, but all in all, really just that beast boss needs to go off with some leftover dudes, slip some more damage through, or someone threw a grenade at it, or a bomb squigs got into it, or you chipped it down. Unlike a breaker boy unit, where if they lose 4 breaker boys, that unit's kind of gone and it's over with. Not to mention, like I said before, a breaker boys really want you to be using them on the wall, which is kind of hard on timing to line up on something like Grey Knights. So that's a hard first game to get into. So shout out to Mr. Mark on that one, making it work. My boy was fighting uphill battle here. He's like, I don't care, man, bring them looters. Awesome. So he goes game 2. He goes into Black Templars. So we have Chaplain Gamardis, High Marshal Helbrecht, Judiciar, Lieutenant, and Emperor's Champion. So you're seeing so many Judiciar guys in the game, just so many Judiciar, Sight First, stuff like that. That's why shooting combined arms matters so much. Bomb squigs, throwing grenades, chipping these guys down, overwatching, firing lanes, stuff like that, because it's the best way we just kind of straight up deal with these guys if you're not playing Warhorde and just fighting on death and trading with them. You have a unit of Soul Intercessors, followed by a Primaris Crusader squad, 2 of those Primaris Crusader squads. A 2 Impulsors, followed by 2 5-man units of jump packs, and 2 Invader ATVs, 2 units of Sword Brethren. So he has 4 missiles here, and then just a couple kind of quite effective, actually, skirmishing kind of units. Why they're effective is, one, this guy, the Invader, gets Maltas, which is pretty cool. Their weird toughness, I think it's tough 5 or 6, I think it's 5, but they have like 7 wounds, so they don't really like fall over to just a simple Storm Boy unit necessarily. They can, but they can't reliably do it. Very character heavy, and you have to be quite cagey here, because these guys can put the volume and straight damage through between Sword Brethren and the Primaris Crusader squads of just bodies to really jack you up as an Orc player. A lot of the time, we would have tools to go into these Primaris Crusader squads with like 10-man units of knobs, but in this case, you only have that 1 5-man units of lobs. A lot of the time, the looters are going to play a huge difference in this. Once the enemy gets confident and they end up putting one of these 20-man units of Crusaders on one of the objectives, that's where like the looters can end up going off and picking up half that unit and bringing the damage too if they're not rocking the Feel No Pains. So love to see that. Not an easy game again by Mr. Mark, because in this one, he ended up getting a 12-point win. So he's like slowly working up to a higher score just with all these tough matchups. So I love to see it, dude. I respectable paths to victory and tough paths to victory are what we're here for, right? That's what Orcs love to see. So then into his 3rd game, which you could already see right now, his 3rd game was the guy who got 2nd place. So my guy's just getting strong matchups the whole time. So into his 3rd game, we can see another Deathwatch. So Deathwatch making an appearance again. And yeah, Orcs taking Orcs to LVO. Whoa, that's what I'm talking about, boy. So we have the Captaining Gravis armor. Again, remember, he has damage reduction, quite respectable when he's leading a unit. We have Lieutenant with combi weapons, a Tech Marine, and then a Watchmaster, which kind of their version of like a Captain. We have an Intercessor squad, followed by a Deathwatch veteran Brick. Love to see that. So these guys have the frag cannon. Those were cool back in my day. And then the Xeno Phase Blade, and a couple power weapons. So a little respectable for like a battle line unit. Pretty expensive though for a battle line unit. 200 points for just like 10 Marines essentially. We have jump pack Intercessor squads, 2 5-mans, pretty cool. And then we have an Astraeus. So I've never had the pleasure of playing into one of these guys, but that seems super KG and pretty cool. We have a Deathwatch Terminator Brick squad, and then Indominator Kill Team, followed by a Stern Guard veteran squad. So I just want to come back to this funny Astraeus So a lot of the time people would think that when you bring this, it's kind of cheeky and you're not really doing good. But we've shown here on the channel before that something even like a Stampa can end up doing really well, like 4-1 at GT. It's very rare, right, that a pilot can pull that off. But there are some cheeky gits can pull that stuff off. And in this case, he was about that life. So he was like, oh, I'm going to do it. It's fine. And so I'll pull that up on screen for you here so that we can laugh at this data sheet and find it pretty awesome. So here's the Estrellas. It is 12 wound, a T12 with 24 wounds with a 2-up armor save and seeks leadership. In your shooting phase, after this model has shot, select one enemy unit hit by one or more attacks made with its twin macro accelerator cannon this phase until the start of your next turn. While this enemy is in battlefield, that enemy unit is suppressed. So you take -1 to hit roll. So he shoots someone and they take -1 to hit. As a boatload of guns, as he has he could pick 2 plasma incinerators, twin bolters or a las cannon, and then some heavy stubbers, followed by his just twin macro cannon. All he has is adaptive tactics from what I can see here, so he could be selected to choose any of these, active for your army, I guess, so you can change his tactics. Other than that, he's just a big old thick brick of killing stuff, and I know that the detachments are already quite killy, so caught me off guard that he was on the list, but my boy was making it work and he was doing it. So you also hear a lot of whispers around the meta right now of these guys kind of just kicking buck, like Deathwatch having so much killing potential. So we have to see it. So, and I liked his name, Seals Are Us. So great job by you, Mr. Aiden. But Mark Morrow pulled that out with just straight damage. So in my opinion, it was one of those things where it's like, I just happen to have great profiles into beating the crap out of you. Between shock attack guns and Breaker Boys and flash gits, it's just enough stuff to go into a lot of these units and a lot of trucks. When you're playing for something like that big Estrellas, he's looking for something effective to kill, like efficient to kill for the points, and trucks are just not where it's at. A big Stern Guard unit is just another big 10-man unit of stuff. Something that the flash gits is really looking to pick up, either when they get out of the truck, they just delete that unit, or flash gits are looking to delete or just utterly damage and handicap any of those 2-wound basic Marine body units, which there are several on this list. And hopefully Mark Morrow just took advantage of that and just used Overwatch and ate some of those units, because he ended up getting a 13-point win on that one against a highly respectable opponent. So great job there, buddy, Mr. Mark. And then we move on to his 4th game. So this is where he went big, ended up going into the Chaos Demons Legions of Access. So again, we're seeing the Slanesh creepy boys making their way up around here. So we have the corded Epotite. I don't know what that is. Sorry, I can't read. I've never seen that really put in the list yet. 2 Keepers of Secrets, the Maskell Slanesh, and then the Chariot. Okay, there's the Chariot with the False Majesty. So we have 1 Demonette unit followed by Nurglings, Beast of Nurgle, and then 2 Fiends, a Seeker, and then 2 Soul Grinders. So Soul Grinders are super under appreciated, and it's one of those things that I wonder, hey, maybe he does want the shooting support. Like I've said, if you're all one phase, then you can get manipulated by people with good movement. That being said, Demonettes, Fiends, a lot of them are really fundamental to this list because the biggest strength it has is its speed and the fact that you can pretty much bleed wounds off one of your focus down units into just some Demonettes and then just really continue momentum into enemies. So I like to see it. I will think Nurglings will end up being on the list. Not sure about a Beast of Nurgle, but Nurglings do end up on the list to infiltrate and kind of make up that space. Soul Grinders, though, I'm not sure about that tech piece. Nonetheless, I just wanted to say, if you're an Orc player going to an event, be aware of the Legions of Access Slanesh. Have plans and tools effective for them and get familiar with their rules, as they're just a great pain if you don't know what they're doing and they get the initiative you. Nonetheless, Mr. Mark Morrow was dogging them with a 20-point victory there, having, like I said, Ludas for just mass damage 2 into those Fiends or into those Demonettes is fantastic. Having Breaker Boys to run into those big Demonettes, pretty awesome for you when it's go time. You can mess them up. And Flash gets absolutely deal with Fiends, whether it's completely demolish them on Overwatch or you just jump out of a truck and smash them up. Not to mention that the Soul Grinders can shoot, but they don't shoot that well and proficiently to constantly pop a truck. So I would even be a little aggressive with my trucks, knowing that they can really only pop 1 reliably. They do have a little bit of Overwatch, so like your Stormboy unit might get picked up and such. Actually, he didn't have a Stormboy unit, like in guards to anybody generally, but he didn't have Stormboy. Oh, he did have 1. Sorry, 1 Stormboy unit. that's all you really have to keep out for their shooting. And they do have good damage when you do get close at distance because they have a big claw and they have a big sword. So they're respectable in that way. I'm not trying to dog a Slaanesh Soul Grinders because they're dope, but Mark Morrow just had so many good tools into the detachment. I mean, you had a Beast Boss also that could run in there and dev one those big monsters and Soul Grinders. So this is just well-written list on them all over by Mark. Having volume, having great anti-demons, anti-vehicles, some dev wounds thrown in there. I like it. So it's showing he has the tools just enough to deal with a lot of these different matchups. And then last, is this last? Let me see. Yeah. Then we go into his last game, which was into the Gene Stealer cult. So the meta is just healthy, boys, because we're seeing Gene Stealers all about here. We've seen Death Watch. We've seen so many different like detachments that weren't so popular even like a couple of months ago. So we have 3 Abominants, followed by 2 Biophages, a Patriarch, and then 2 Sanctus. We have a 10-man unit of Acolyte with pistols, 1 unit of 5-mans with pistols, a 5-man unit of Hand of Flamers, 3 big units of Aberrants, followed by a 10-man unit of Metamorphs, 3 fat 5-man bricks of I guess they're not fat, but they seem kind of fat, of Pure Strains, 2 Achilles Ridge Runner unit, individual Ridge Runner, and then a Goliath truck. So these guys always want to go first and try to jail you and push you back, create layers so that as you kill them, they constantly just make more and more screens and take more and more space. But like I've said before, Orks simply have really great tools into that. And when you look at Mark's list, he has a lot of good tools into that. Like I've said before, he's winning a lot of these guys on 2s. He has multi-damage. He has shooting and punching. These Snaggle Boys can get to strength 6. Flash Kids can get to strength 7 as well. Well, so can Snaggle Boys, I guess. And you have knobs with power claws if he has to deal with anything. A lot of the time you want to shoot the Aberrants, because they have fight on death, I believe, and their character can get up. So a lot of the time you want to shoot them, and then when their character gets up, you run in and punch their character like stay down, get, and then that feels a lot better than him getting back up after a fight, punch, and still being there the following turn. Hyper aggression is a big deal. When they come to meet you with their scouting, infiltrating, Gene Stealers, that's where you're happy that you have a little bit of shooting with Burner Boys to come out, not get full commitments in, still move your trucks around, and then just get out, disembark, wall, and then run them over. Don't give them ground, and keep up the game. If you play too cagey and overthink it, then they just start to just take over the board, and then as you're killing them, then they still keep scoring. So a lot of times Gene Stealers just be full aggro, and you do have to respect that they can kill you, but you have to take that chance and let the dice be the dice. So that being said, Mark pulled that out with a 14-point win into the Gene Stealers. That was the guy that got 3rd place. So this dude was already on a roll. He scored well, as awesome. So Mark, very respectable showing with the Taktiks Brigade. Nice combined arms detachment and forces. Really interesting version of the truck spam. And all in all, be proud of that undefeated for the Taktiks Brigade, boy, because the Taktiks Brigade were out and stunting this weekend. So with that being said, we move on. So now we move to last, but certainly not least, Mr. Brian Sepp. So Mr. Brian was at the Nottingham Super Major, excuse me. Let me close some of these tabs because I'm pretty heavy on these tabs over here, boys. Yep. So yeah. Sorry, I've had so many. Nice. Okay. So Brian was actually ended up getting 5th at the major. He didn't make it to the final bracket. He was at the top. So barely cut short, dude. I feel you on that. Sorry to see that, but super major, fantastic, huge event. 300 plus, I think it was like 388 players. So even getting 4th is an amazing achievement. And sometimes you just a couple points missed here and there from cards, dude. So anybody that's like, oh man, he did a great job. And he always does. Brian, we've seen him before, Art of War stuff. So check out the Art of War if he shows up on there and starts doing any interviews or anything. I'm sure he'll have some cool stuff to say. If not, Brian, hit me up. So let's take a look at his Taktikal Brigade. So we have a big mech in mega armor with the mech captain. I absolutely love that. That's my favorite way to run the flash kits with this enhancement. as a 10-man unit. The 4-up invul and regenning units is amazing, and it's a great way to get the game kickstarted. Then he has 3 Big Macs with shock attack guns, with one with the Gob Boomer, and then 3 war bosses. He has 3 units of Breaker Boys. They're all kitted out with hammers and then the tank hammer. 1 Burner Boy, the 10-man unit of flash kits with the 5-man unit of flash kits, 1 Gretchen, 2 Storm Boy units, and then 3 trucks. Boom. So it's funny because I did a video with last week on Orc list to kind of look out for that are going to come out, and I think I wrote a very similar version of this list, or I found a very similar version of this list on there, as this is what a lot of people are expecting to see. So some people might see this and immediately get a little upset. Oh, you're just spamming the same unit, blah, 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 get us nerfed. And I get it. I mean, I'm not saying blah, 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 as in you have nothing that's not what you say isn't worth being heard. I'm saying we've heard it before because this is kind of how competitive 40K can turn out sometimes. But I will say that we should all be encouraged that you can do great and still win without doing this. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing this because each meta calls for different tools and tech pieces based off the terrain you're going to be on, what you're expecting to see. And that's something we've shown throughout the whole stream today, is that with all these different detachments and lists, is that people a lot of the time were just teching into what's in their meta and applying that. And Brian going into a super major means that he had to be even more diverse, which is where a lot of the time these redundant builds come from, is that you're gonna have to fight a lot of these different armies that all are kind of vulnerable to this to a certain extent, but you need to bring the tool over and over again so you can keep using it and have more assured outcomes in those cases, especially if you're playing like 8-round events and stuff, and they're just looking for straight damage. Not sure if the Breaker Boy things were hold though, right? And I'm just saying that right now, even with Brian doing so freaking good, I think the majority of the general community will still find great success with just 1 Breaker Boy unit. So I don't think Brian is promoting any of you guys go out and get there. I think our get just understood that goes great into custodians, does great into elite space marines, does great into demons, does great into armor heavy lists. So Brian did great by going undefeated. So let's take a look at his path to victory by the great Brian Sepp. So game 1, we have Waaaghday Craft World, which is one of those armies which you're like, not sure if that damage stream would be great, right? And that's why I wanted to look at it. So we have Artark Wayleaper, excuse my English, followed by an Avatar of Kane, Death Jester, a Farseer, Fugan, the Visark, and then Hyavrin. So what is this? This is what's it called? Yanari. He is Yanari. Avatar, right, is like the best target for everybody on this list wants to get a chunk out of Avatar in this version of the Orcs. We have triple Fire Prism, which these guys are sick because if one can see you, they can all kind of focus through him and channel through him and see you, which is really potent if you have like that 1 10-man unit of flash kits and you're like, oh no, everything can just target me down in my 4-up invuln and completely punish me. Mind you, it's a huge point investment to focus down just some flash kits though. Then we have Rangers, a unit of 5 Scorpions, 2 5-man units of Swooping Hawks, and then a Harley Quinn Trope, a big, what is that, 10-man, 20-man unit? That's 20-man unit? I don't even know they had those. That's pretty sick. So unique Eldar list. Not gonna pretend I know exactly how that works. I just know, like I've said before, Orc chucks followed by flash kits shooting, and a lot of the time this is how you end up using the flash kits shooting, which is why I point out that Fire Prism thing. Is you take the truck, you get quite aggressive with the flash kit unit, you drop it into somewhere near the middle of the battlefield, so you can overlook multiple objectives, and then as soon as the Eldar player wants to move a unit around, just let them know, as soon as you move that guy into this path, I'm overwatching you. And that just makes up all of his movement phase, and you start picking up multiple Eldar units the longer that unit's alive. So you'll get out, shoot one, but then the next time you're like, anytime you move the stage and shoot anything, I'll overwatch you. And that just messes up their game plan a lot of the time. Not to mention, if they close the distance, they're going to get beat up by all those Breaker Boys and Tank Busters. So Brian just bullied them, 100, almost 100 point, 99 point game right there. And then we'll move on to his second game. We have the Chaos Demons, and again, we see something like the Bellacore, but this is the index detachment. So you're going to see Waaaghtaktiks, the Changeling, the Great Unclean One with the Endless Gift for the 4-up Feel No Pain, 2 units of Nurglings, Plague Bears, 2 units of Blood Crushers, and then 2 Fleshhound units. This is one of those lists where you're happy you have so much that I utterly destroy demons and greater demon type of units. Just if you cripple Waaaghtaktiks on this list. This is one of those big things because he's casting shadows. He's giving feel no pings to other units that are around him that he's trying to be around. He's cutting OC, stuff like that. You end up killing Waaaghtaktiks. You end up killing a Bloodthirster, and you deal with these blood crushers, and then the rest of the army just kind of slowly falls apart. The Great Unclean One usually just be left alone and kill everything else, unless you have very specific tools, like a big 20-man unit of Beast Snaggle Boys and Gaz and a War Horde. I don't advise even going for this guy, so you learn to play around and kill everything else, which is why we said Brian teched into this, because he understood I'm gonna have to kill a lot of people that are bringing hard skews because they're going to such a big event. They don't want to have a bad performance. These big events, you're going to see a lot of skews, because a skew ensures that you're more likely to win more games than you lose. Therefore, people have to have tools to utterly demolish a skew, score big on them, that way they can perform well. So that's why Brian ends up going into these tools. Really great by him, having these guys away when they try to come out and rush and nesting doll you, because they'll come down, try to get 6-inch, try to get off on you, and you can't really let that happen as an orc player on such fragile units that you have between tank busters and breakers. So you take advantage of your trucks, take advantage of your storm boys running out, and then you take advantage of your overwatch, and you just, hey, blood crushers, popping lethal sustain and utterly destroying you guys. Hey, and that feels good. So great job, Mr. Brian. Recall by there, 99-point win there. I think if you're going to an event, get familiar with demons, because they can either break you and end up beating you on accident, and you're like, no, I should have beat you, or you crush them and you get huge scores. That's a lot of the time been my results. And so with game 3, we go into Space Marine Blood Angels Liberator Assault Group. So a lot of the time in this detachment, when you're playing something like War Horde, you're like, I got more stuff than you. I'll fight on death and run into you. In this case, it's elite on elite, boys. So we have an Ancient and Terminator armor and a captain. Light on characters, respectable, because usually these guys just run out of units. So he has Assault Intercessors followed by a basic intercessor for sticky objective. Then we have 3 5-man units of intercessor squads, because these guys can actually get stuck in and fight quite effectively in this detachment. 2 ballistic dreadnoughts, so effective for their points and shooting, a little bit of anti-tank. They act as bait for other enemy shooting armies as well. They can go out, get stuff kickstarted, and pull up some charges, like get some bait going for you, or they just hold your back line and screen for you. Then a Brutalis dreadnought, followed by 2 scout squads, that big Terminator brick, and then 2 Vindicators. So this is the actual more reliable shooting, and it kind of overlaps with those cheap dreadnoughts. So that all of your guns are 2-up armor saves and D6 damage. So if it goes off hard. And I like to see that. And then of course Vindicators shoot in combat, so they can kind of follow up your gun line, considering that they don't have great range. Follow up your melee potential, because they don't have great range. And then a Cladius Assassin. So many Cladius Assassins still making their way onto this. Keep in mind, this is that UKTC terrain, which means they have like big, no offense, right? They have kind of a big open firing lane sometimes on one side of the table. And then the other side of the table, they have good staging points where you can move up, set up like trucks or battle wagons, it is, and then get out and charge. But then the enemy unit will line that opposing building. So you do have to be somewhat fast and KG, and understand that one side of the board is going to be kind of open no man's land, the other side is going to be where all the combat's going on. So I can see why he brought like Vindicators and those guys to kind of hold that side while the jetpacks runs from terrain to terrain. Brutalis maybe gets some good charges in. I think it's pretty cool. Pretty cool version of Blood Angels. And this was actually Brian's lowest scoring game. So the fact that someone had so much actually elite, like killy versions of Blood Angels, and then had the ability to close a distance on you and actually kill them, could be quite frightening. And he's not so loaded on characters, which means you just have even more units of all these dumb Blood Angel, cheapness that can fight you so good and shoot you just good enough. I mean, you don't even want an Assault Intercessor, a unit running into your Breaker Boys after a truck gets popped, because between impact charges and their buffs, they can actually beat the crap out of you. And then this Terminator squad with a Storm Shield means that you're losing like half as many Terminators as those tank busters when they get shot, when they shoot at them, if they shoot at them. Not to mention Vindicators actually have the ability to possibly tank the tank buster shooting, or in my experience, even tank the Breaker Boys melee after they've already been damaged from other stuff like grenades and bomb squigs, because they pop armor of contempt and the chance they just roll the saves and they're all right and you don't roll hot enough. Not always, but I'm saying that could contribute to this becoming a harder game, which is what we see based off the score. So not sure exactly what it is. We're just covering the potentials of how it became possibly happened. But Brian pulled it out still. Good job there. Then he goes on to his game 4. And in this game, he gets a 100 against the Thousand Suns. Thousand Suns have typically hated Orks pressure in Orks trucks because they're like, I shoot you and then oops, I'm now have nothing to follow you up and kill you with. So in this case, we have tank busters now. So we have two. So we have Armon on Disc of Siege, followed by an Exalted Sorcerer on Disc of Siege, 2 Infernal Masters. Sorry, 3 Infernal Masters, and then Magnus the Red. We have 3 units of 5 Rubric Marines, followed by Zangor Enlighten, 2 Mutalisk Vortex Beasts, 2 Cultist units, and then a Zangor Enlighten 5-man unit. Or is that a 5-man unit? Yeah. So he scored 100 points on this. A lot of the time they try to use Magnus and maybe tank some damage and stuff. Magnus isn't really appreciating that. Even if you ignore Magnus, Mutalisk Vortex Beasts are perfect profiles into tank busters. They're like, oh, you're T10 and like 12 wounds? Cool, bro. You're dead. And then, like I said, Rubric Marines would hate Orks already as it is. So I just don't think with the point cost of T Suns, and then you're playing into Brian, it just, I'm sure it got overwhelming quite quickly, especially if Brian went first. So 100 points there by Mr. Brian. Great job. And I like that. After you get to 77, got to pull out 100. But that 77, I bet you got Brian a little angry boy, because that's probably what stopped him from getting that last bracket. Harsh. Then he goes to his 5th game, where he goes into the Custodians. So he finally seen the Custodians, and this is something that's kind of like gatekeeperish in my opinion, where you're going to see it all over the mid tables, or even in this case make it to some of the later tables, because it's that good, especially if it has a good pilot or boys hot rolling 4-ups that day. So we have a Blade Champion, followed by a Telemon, who's a character that's pretty cool. 2 Caladius Grav Tanks, because they're super effective anti-tank vehicles. Only 1 unit of Wardens, 2 units of Prosecutors, 2 Telemon Heavy Dreadnoughts, followed by 3 Contemptor Dreadnoughts. So you bring the Contemptors because they actually have some shooting involved in them, instead of just bringing like the fancy ones, and they're good point cost. And then the Telemons, again, they're kind of like a Redemptor Dreadnought in a lot of cases, but just bigger and a little bit tougher with invulns. But like I said, this kind of list is exactly why Brian brought this kind of Ork list. You have to be able to break this many Telemons, this many Dreadnoughts, this many 3-wound units. You have to have strong shooting, and not just in one phase with actual AP, so you can kill the Wardens, because they'll just pop the 4 of Feel No Pain, and then you can't do anything to them. You need to threaten at least Grav Tanks, so they can't just disrespectfully shoot all of your trucks at will. So nonetheless, this exact list is why Brian would bring this kind of list he brought, and the score showed it, because he got a 96-point win, right? So the Breaker Boys in this case would get up to strength 7, which would help them even if they went into infantry, but in this case they don't have to go into any infantry for Custodes. They could just, everything here is subject to any one of Brian's units, and then the flash kits are left over to chew up Prosecutors or assist in jumping in these units. In a lot of the games, you might even use the flash kits, like I said, in a Grey Knight matchup where they don't have a lot of great targets. You're going to let them come out, act as kind of like the quick starter for the enemy to activate and come into you, and then you call the wall, get good efficiency out of your Breaker Boys and your Tank Busters, because they actually have to get kind of close to you, and the flash kits are valuable enough that the enemy will go for it, and they have durable enough at range that the enemy will have layers to whatever they attack it with, which means you have now successfully baited them and can get good value on your very efficient elite Brian Sepp Ork Taktikal Brigade list. So whoa for Mr. Brian Sepp for getting 5-0 and just barely falling outside of that top bracket. Unfortunate Blood Angel, bad Blood Angel guy. No good by you. Get crumped easier. So let's go over the list one more time. We have Big Mech and Mega Armor with Mech Captain, my favorite way to run that brick. 3 shock attack guns, 1 with God Boomer, 3 war bosses, 3 Breaker Boy units, followed by 3 Tank Buster units, 1 Burner Boy unit, a 10-man unit of flash kits with a 5-man unit of flash kits, 2 5-man units of Storm Boys, and simply 3 trucks. Boom, should be surprised. This list is something similar to this list. It's going to be popular. It's going to be everywhere sometimes, especially after this weekend. So yeah, check it out. We talked about it last weekend. So great job by Mr. Brian. I think when you're going to something like a super major, there is absolutely nothing wrong with running this kind of list because you need it for the kind of hard skews and big point scoring differentials you need to gain at this kind of events. So great job by Brian, and hope to see you doing more greatness with the Great WAAAGH. So you get that's it for the undefeated list today. And of course, if you didn't see in the beginning, like I pointed out, we will have 2 guest appearances in the following Fridays. On the 17th, we will have Mr. Mork Perry with his Taktikal Brigade, which brought a 20-man unit of boys with shooters. He had a Morkana on the list, Zagrat, Waaaghtaktiks, so outside of the box in KG. And then you had Michael Mann's Taktikal Brigade list, who's coming on the 24th. And Michael Mann's list was awesome because it had just about no investment from the new data sheets. I'm making sure just before I speak out of my butt. But yeah, so Michael Mann's list is fantastic because he went undefeated with none of the new data sheets on his list. And he got second place at the Denver Fight Club, almost getting first, still being undefeated with great scores nonetheless, without using any of the new data sheets. So Michael Mann definitely has to make an appearance there and explain that to us. Great job by that git. So nonetheless, so much to look forward to for org players out there. Of course, check out the Discord, the Facebook, and join membership if you feel it and we do a good job around here. Of course, check out the Baron of Dice, and thank you for the paint competition. If you haven't participated or checked that out, you absolutely should, because you give winners and we do raffles. And so we very much love the community and love to be stuck in with all you get. So this was an extra long one, about double the length of normal Waaaghday Wednesdays, but it is very much worth it. And I hope a lot of you got inspired. Don't be so worried about possible incoming nerfs. Guys, we've never cared about that before. I understand and mess with like your reps and your list familiarity, but all in all, we have so much diverse units we can work with and so many different diverse detachments that just enjoy the game as best you can right now for what it is and have a good time. Whatever is next to come, we'll make the most out of it because orcs don't get nice things. We make nice things. So there's always one thing to keep in mind is don't cross our wall because we knock your teeth out. Whoa!